Hello and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Proud Malcontent. I am Peter A. Bell and I am a proud malcontent. Some of you might be wondering where that title came from, where the name came from. It happened, I think it was on the comments section of my blog, WordPress one. Somebody one time called me a malcontent. You're nothing but a malcontent, meaning it is a dismissive epithet. So I thought about it and I thought, well, what is a malcontent? A malcontent is someone who is not satisfied. They're disgruntled. They're not pleased with the way things are. I thought, well, yeah, that describes me. I am a malcontent, and I'm quite proud to be a malcontent. Especially at my age, when people might be thought that at 74 years old, going on 75, it might have been thought that it was kind of time to be sitting back a wee bit. But no, I'm still a malcontent, and I don't mind who knows it. I will complain. I will make my voice heard if I possibly can. And that's what I do. That's what I've been doing for some years now. I'm getting a bit tired, it has to be said. I'm getting a bit weary, like I think a lot of other people in the independence movement. But we still keep plodding on because it's a worthy cause and because there is so much reason to be a proud malcontent. Usually at this point, I go into a thing that I've called the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's basically just filler, but it gives me a chance. I take 3 articles, usually from the National. It's easier. It's just easier if I use one newspaper. And some of these stories will only be in the National. And the ones that will be elsewhere will probably be in the National anyway, or they're not of any interest to me. So I take 3 articles, one of which I label good, one bad, and one positively ugly. That I'm not doing that today. What I'm doing today is I found there was an article by Jonathan Shafi, a column in the National on Monday. I think it might have been yesterday. When was the 22nd? That was yesterday, yeah. Jonathan Shafi, in case you don't know him, is quite a well-known writer, blogger on the, let's call it the intellectual left of Scottish politics. That's what I call it when I'm being polite, which isn't very often. So make the most of the intellectual left. Jonathan, I know Jonathan slightly. I have spoken to him a number of times at various events over the duration of the 2014 referendum campaign, and a couple of times since. I know Jonathan to be one of the good guys. I have a great deal of respect for him, and I usually read his column quite avidly. I look out for his stuff. He also publishes on a blog called Conter. I should mention that, or he'll give me a row. The reason I didn't read this one, the reason I only went to it after somebody on the comments section of my blog had referred to it. I went back and decided to take a look at it again. But you'll see the reason I wasn't keen on it right from the very start. When you see the headline where Jonathan's saying, or the headline's implying anyway, that Jonathan's saying, let's drop the yes and refocus. Well, I don't have much problem with the refocus, but dropping the yes, However, we'll get to that. I set out to highlight a few sections, a few pieces from Jonathan's column, but I've ended up highlighting most of it. There's certain of his remarks that strike me as very apt. Some I'm a bit dubious about, and some I'm quite opposed to. When he says the conversation as a whole, that is the discourse within the independence movement. When he says the conversation as a whole is trapped and stale. The SNP say this predictable thing, and people like me, him, in different parts of the movement respond in the usual manner. Well, yeah, that is mainly true. I would say there's different manners of responding now. I don't think it's as simple as simply that the SNP come out with their usual line. We all know what it is, and then people come out and criticise it or laud it to the heavens, and there's those two camps. I think it's a wee bit more subtle than that. There is definitely the two camp tribalism is going on, particularly noticeable between SNP and ALAPA. Which I find ironic because there really isn't that much to pick and choose between them. From a nationalist's point of view, there is absolutely nothing to pick and choose between them. But I think it's a wee bit more subtle than Jonathan implies. There are different perspectives now. And if you look across the independence movement, you will find those different perspectives. Jonathan goes on to say, to be brutally honest, despite campaigning hard for a yes vote in 2014, the experience of the national question since has been far from inspirational. To the extent that I've come to reconsider the whole thing. That sounds ominous. After all, we have all witnessed the way in which it has been utilised by the SNP for their own ends. Well, again, Jonathan speaks truth here. There's no doubt that the SNP has seized the independence, the idea of independence. They haven't seized the independence movement. I think that's an important distinction. But they've seized the idea of independence and made it their own, and made it their own electioneering platform, if you like. And they've been helped in this by the mainstream media, of course, who like to simplify things, who like to dumb things down, and who are quite accustomed to two-party politics. So when the SNP rose to power, and they had the Tories, Labour, and the SNP, that they found a bit difficult to cope with, and they also found the independence movement difficult, the nationalist movement difficult to cope with. So they treated it as if it was the independence, the fight to restore independence was simply party policy for the SNP. It was just party policy. I'll go on to talk about that later. It is a much more than just party policy. But the SNP tried to make it theirs, and the media helped them in this because it simplified things from their perspective. It meant that they could provide, they had a simpler analysis of the whole situation if it was just the one party. I don't suppose they saw at the time that this would be useful during the referendum campaign, but it certainly was. because the media and the British parties and the SNP, at least the SNP went along with it. They treated the referendum campaign like an election campaign, and they argued on a whole range of issues, pensions, currency, defence, the whole range of issues. I think there were about half a dozen, and they simply did them in rotation. And as soon as awkward questions were asked about one, they just moved on to the next one. And then a few weeks later, they came back to the first one again. They just kept rotating it all the time, and it was about asking questions so as to generate doubt or aggravate existing doubt. They're just asking questions for its own sake, and treating it like a political campaign. Managed by doing that, they managed to avoid actually talking about the issue that the referendum was about. Independence, or it's supposed to be about. We know now that it was a sham Section 30 referendum, and that it would not have restored Scotland's independence, even if we'd got a substantial yes vote. It was never going to happen. But it's definitely the case that the SNP have taken independence as an electioneering device, and now others have too. Alapa has, for a start, and there are others, but I'm not going to get into dealing with them all. There's Alapa. It's just a time thing. I can't mention them all, and I can't explain the differences between them. As far as I'm concerned, the similarity is enough. They're all using independence as an electioneering device, just as the SNP does. Well, it worked for the SNP, so these others all thought, well, it might work for us as well. Okay, what's Jonathan saying next? Perhaps most tellingly, the dominant position the SNP had achieved in Scottish politics never translated to the programme of reform that would really have transformed the lives of working class Scots, albeit within the boundaries of devolution, while the cause of independence, frankly speaking, hit the rocks. Well, I have to say, Jonathan, that part of the reason that the independence campaign hit the rocks was because there was too much talk about this programme of reform. This is referencing the whole, what I've called the whole vision thing, where we were encouraged to detail our vision of what an independent Scotland should look like. So, with the result that there were countless visions out there, from the centre right, or the way through to the radical left. There were all these different visions. So nobody had any way of knowing what they were voting for when it came to the referendum. If they voted yes, they didn't know what they were getting. And if they voted no, they didn't know what they were getting, because that changed throughout. And this again comes back to the referendum being treated not as a referendum, but as an election campaign. And all this talk of a programme of reform, that's stuff for an election manifesto. Sorry if I'm a bit distracted. I'm having to work the buttons here while I'm going. It's all part of an election campaign, and it's nothing to do with independence. We're not focused on the constitutional issue. Apart from anything else, a revitalisation of the debate around Scotland's national ambitions and prospects has merit in and of itself. Yes, it does, but it is not directly related to the question of independence. especially in a world order which is undergoing the most fundamental restructuring since the Second World War era? Well, yes and no. To me, the constitutional issue is important all the time. It's of central importance in Scotland. So we need to be focused on that, and this idea that we should be talking about all sorts of different things and not focusing on independence, that really irritates me. Uh, I'll come back to this again, because there's basic elements of Jonathan's argument here which I'm in some disagreement with. Let's move on to the next piece that I've highlighted. And this is, again, where my hair stands up on end. There is not going to be a referendum on the issue independence anytime soon, for lots of reasons which require more space to fully explore. But let's just for the moment agree that it is off the agenda. Well, I do not agree. And I'm happy to explain the reason. Jonathan doesn't explain his reasons, but I'm happy to explain the reason why it isn't off the agenda. It isn't off the agenda because Scotland's independence will only be restored when the people of Scotland vote for that in a proper constitutional referendum. So if a referendum is off the table, then so is independence. And I don't accept that. I will not accept that. What it seems to me Jonathan has in mind here is a Section 30 referendum. Like so many other people, he is putting Westminster at the centre of the constitutional issue. And there is not going to be, from his perspective, there is not going to be a referendum anytime soon or ever because Westminster says no. Well, I don't care if Westminster says no. Westminster has no role in the exercise by the people of Scotland of our right of self-determination. If we decide that we are having a referendum on independence, a proper constitutional referendum, that is our right. That is an inalienable right. It is a human right. So we cannot possibly concede that a referendum is off the table. Especially, we can't concede that it's off the table because Westminster says so. Because that is giving Westminster the final say. The people of Scotland are sovereign. We have the final say. Back to Jonathan. The programmatic work is a mess in key areas, especially on currency. Oh dear, here we go. Currency again. Currency is only an issue because people make it an issue. Jonathan goes on to say, it's very simple. No independent central bank means no economic control, and without economic power, a country cannot be independent. I don't know of anybody who would argue against that. It's unarguable. So why make this fuss about it? Obviously, Scotland is we're going to have, when independent, we're going to have a central bank. We're going to have our own currency. These things are all settled. They're inevitable. They must happen as part of independence, perhaps not immediately, but perhaps there might be a short period when the commission said Andrew Wilson's report allowed 10 years for this period of sterlingization. He made himself a hostage to fortune there because he shouldn't have mentioned any number. If sterlingization happens, it will end when the Scottish government considers it time to end it. And that could be within a week, or within a year, or within a month. The thing is, we don't know. That would be for a question for the duly elected government of independent Scotland. But it really isn't the big issue that people make of it. These things will happen as a matter of course with independence. We will have a provisional constitution when we become independent. And there is no way that that provisional constitution will not make provision for monetary policy. There's no way. There's no way it can be avoided. So yeah, that's a fuss about nothing from my perspective. Jonathan goes on. It's very simple. Yes, I've read that. But now, much of the industrial base required to set up a new state has already been sold off to foreign capital and multinational corporations. Time has been wasted. Oh boy, has it. We've had years in which to make a credible and popular case to raise support, despite the shock of Brexit, much too central to this SNP's case. The dial has not shifted. Right. He's certainly right. Jonathan is certainly right about much of the industrial base having been destroyed or sold off. It's certainly been eroded, and it is being at an accelerated pace. Our industrial infrastructure, our economic infrastructure, the entire infrastructure of Scotland. Like the bones in a smoky, the things that hold us together as a country, all of these things are being weakened and eroded, if not just downright broken and discarded, and it's all undermining our capacity to be an independent country. There's the whole thing about too wee, too poor, too stupid. Well, the British state has set out to make that true. They want to exploit and expropriate our resources to the point where independence, or a point where the case can be made, a convincing case can be made that Scotland is not economically viable as an independent state. Now, according to the UN, that shouldn't matter. That is not relevant. The only thing, according to the UN, the only thing that is relevant is the will of the people. So the fact that the industrial base has been eroded really isn't of any great consequence as far as the constitutional question is concerned. We've had years in which to make a credible and popular case to raise support. I would be fine with that if Jonathan was talking about making a case for independence, but he's not. He's talking again in the same terms as as overwhelmed the discourse during the 2014 referendum debate. He's talking in terms of making a popular case for a Scotland which doesn't even exist yet, a Scotland that we cannot make any stipulations about, other than what is in a provisional constitution, which is just the very basics to allow us to work as a state. We cannot make stipulations in advance. We cannot bind the government, the parliament, and the new state of Scotland. We cannot bind them in advance. So all this talk of vision, there is actually no way that that's a prediction or a forecast or even a promise, because none of that can be guaranteed to be delivered. None of it. So the whole thing about vision is, I wouldn't say it's pointless, but it does not relate to the constitutional issue, and we should be addressing the constitutional issue in different terms altogether. Again, I will get to that. For the moment, we'll go back to Jonathan and his next comment that I've highlighted. There is no door knocking to be done, no community outreach to be had. Instead, this has to be a period of ideas. Oh, he starts off so well. There's the door knocking and the community outreach thing. That was a big feature in the 2014 campaign, mainly because it was being fought like an election campaign. And the unionists, Better Together, they would say something about aliens invading Scotland. Would Scotland be able to defend itself against an alien attack if that happened? And then the SNP and the Yes movement would start going round the doors, trying to reassure people that yes, we would be able to. We got into this argument about alien attacks. Okay, there were other arguments about currency and all the rest of it, central banks, all the rest of it. But we weren't talking about the constitutional issue. So I would agree that there's no door knocking to be done and no community outreach to be had. But I would agree for a different reason from Jonathan. I would agree because the constitutional issue is a national issue and it should be addressed with a national campaign. One of the weaknesses of the Yes campaign for the 2014 referendum was also one of its strengths. It was a strength in that it got mass participation, but it was a weakness in that it was diffused and dispersed. And the independence movement presented itself differently in different places. And it presented itself differently in the same places when perhaps one pro-independence group, say Business for Scotland, came along and said basically independence means this, this, and this. Then the SNP would come along and say, oh, independence means this, this, and this. And then somebody like Jonathan Shaffey or Robin McAlpine would come along and say, no, independence means this, this, and this. So what are voters going to be other than confused? No, it needs to be a national campaign, a central campaign with a single message, a tight, focused campaign. But Jonathan then says, instead, this has to be a period of ideas. Oh, dear me, no. Talking shops again, talking shops. Have we not? We have enough of them. But up until fairly recently, I seem to spend half my time going to one talking shop or another. Now, some of them are quite productive. SSRG, for example, it does excellent work, and their conference is second to none. And I'm not just saying that because I'm invited to speak, although yes, I am saying it because I'm invited to speak, because it's just about the only place that I'm invited to speak. And that the fact that people like me, dissenting voices, people sometimes presented as being on the fringe of the Yes movement, when people like myself can get a voice within an organization, or at least be allowed to speak to an organization, that in itself is a big mark in their favor. It means that they're open. And I like that about SSRG. But when Jonathan says, when he talks about a period of ideas, I'm very dubious about that. It sounds like he's wanting us all to sit around and talk about big ideas for after independence. The important issue that we have to address now is the how of becoming independent, not the details of being independent. 99.9% of that will have to be worked out after independence. It will have to be worked out as an independent state. And a big chunk of that will just work itself out anyway. I mean, there is an apparatus there for running the country. So that will just carry on. Things will change, not necessarily all at once, but things will be different. But we really shouldn't be talking about that right now. We should be talking about the becoming part. I like this line from Jonathan. It's not impossible to make the independence question the gravitational pole for the most interesting and dynamic political thinking available. Well, I like it. I like the idea of the independence question being a gravitational pole, the centre of Scotland's political discourse. That is where it belongs. It belongs at the centre of our political discourse. That's where it should have been all along. But it belongs up. It deserves that place of its own in the centre. If it's the gravitational pole, then it's pulling things in around it, but they're still separate from it. All the policy issues are separate, and we have to address a constitutional issue on its own in isolation. It's not a question of policy. Policy is for after independence. We have to talk about becoming independent. That was never mentioned during the 2014 referendum. It was never mentioned actually how independence would be restored. And it hasn't been talked about by any of the political parties or any of the independence organisations or groups, as far as I'm aware. The how has not been addressed. It's only quite recently, and partly since myself and others started demanding answers about the how of independence, it's only recently that there's been any talk about it at all. And we really need to be addressing that. Apart from anything else, we can't expect people to support the idea of restoring independence if we can't even tell them how we're going to do it. And I mean exactly how we're going to do it. I put it this way: it's like selling. The vision thing is like selling independence as if it was a holiday destination. And because we haven't addressed the how issue, we're selling a holiday destination without even telling the people how to get there, and without even reassuring them that we know how to get there. So yeah, that's kind of a ridiculous position to be in. What's next? And I think we're nearly at the end. I think for this to happen, we would need to escape the bandwidth as prescribed by the SNP on one hand and the main Westminster parties on the other, to rebuild and rethink the foundations and principles of the project as a whole. Again, this is Jonathan being of the left. He sees independence as a means to an end. He does not see independence as an end in itself. And I'll come back to that. By encouraging such a change of perspectives, he's talking visions here again, the core of the independence movement might reconsolidate. No, it won't. Because if you're talking policy, there will always be differences on policy. So it's not going to allow for a reconsolidation of the Yes movement. What will allow for reconsolidation is an actual plan, a plan for restoring independence, something that they can actually show to people and say, right, if you vote this way, we will do this, 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 and this. And at the end, independence is restored. Now, there's plenty politicians saying, vote for me, and plenty parties saying, oh, vote for us, and we'll deliver independence. There's plenty of them saying that. None of them are saying how. Some of them are pretending to say how. They're presenting something as a strategy. But if you look closely at it, you don't even have to look that closely. It's not a strategy at all. It's just electioneering. And I I don't like that. I'm trying to be polite here. I don't like that. Uh, Moving on to the next one. This is the bit where Jonathan actually says yes needs to be jettisoned. It only makes sense if you were around in 2014. Well, no, definitely not. Yes is a brand, uh, and you don't mess with the brand ever. Uh, that's just an iron rule of marketing, and a political campaign is a marketing campaign. It should be thought of as such. For the 2014 referendum, the SNP, they were paying all the bills. Well, we were paying the bills. The SNP was disbursing the money. Let's not get into that. They hired a team, a marketing team under a guy called Ian Dommett, who's something of a marketing guru. These people knew what they were doing, and they put together a strategy, a campaign strategy. And had they been left to manage that strategy, things might have worked out much more differently. If I recall, I was at Hope Street a few times discussing this strategy. I went with others because the strategy didn't seem to be working. But the reason the strategy wasn't working was because the strategy was not being implemented. These guys were sitting in the Hope Street working on this strategy, working on a whole campaign structure, and the SNP was just off doing its own thing. It was doing what it's good at. The SNP was good at that time. It was amazingly good at winning referendums, and that was largely because of the number of foot soldiers the SNP could put on the ground. The just sheer amount of person-to-person contact that the SNP could organise. And it was great at winning elections. So the SNP set out to do it the same way as they won elections. They thought they could win it that way. And as I say, that diffused the whole issue. Instead of being only about the constitutional question, it became about everything that would be addressed in an election, and that was a killer. That was a killer. Apart from anything else, it gave the no side a whole range of things that they could ask questions about. So they were asking these questions not to garner information, but to cast doubt. Jonathan finishes, or in his last paragraph, he says, whatever happens, Scotland cannot remain in this rut of zombie government with reform as the only outrider, combined with a reheated push for independence without substance whenever the SNP require it. Well, that rather sums up the situation, doesn't it? That is kind of where we are. But reform actually gives us a hint as to the solution or a way of addressing this, because it is an outrider, or what I'd call a disruptor. And how you address a disruptor is by being a better disruptor. And that is something that we don't have on the pro-independence side. We do not have a disruptor. We do not have a political party. It needs to be a political party for various reasons. Time's short, so I'm not going to get into it. I just say it needs to be a political party, and we don't have a political party which is representing a different perspective, a reframed perspective on the constitutional issue. They're all rehashing all the stuff from the 2014 campaign. The only thing that's been added is the possibility of a de facto referendum using an election as a referendum. And they've even got that wrong. They've gone for the simplistic, oh, make it a de facto referendum on independence. That won't work. Again, that's something else I'll have to get into another time. But no, we haven't got that disruptor on the nationalist side, on the pro-independence side. We don't have that disruptor, and that is definitely what we need. We need an angry voice that sounds out, and people will be attracted to that. And if that sound voice is setting out a plan, and people actually believe that independence can be restored, then they will come back. The ones who've walked away will come back. And if we do that correctly, if we are a good enough disruptor, then we will even possibly and hopefully waken some of the people who never vote, because that is where we're going to get the percentage points that we need to win a referendum. We're not going to get it from soft no's. All the soft no's have been mopped up. There's very little there to get. And they're so varied now. They're so few and so varied, they cannot be a target for a campaign. But the people who never vote and the people who used to vote but now don't because of the SNP, let's say it, they will be a target. The first target is the ones that walked away. The second target, the ones that never vote. Their campaign should be addressing them. Unfortunately, fortunately, not unfortunately, fortunately, the same kind of campaign, the same kind of messaging will address both of those targets. So we're fortunate in a way is that we have quite a simple way of addressing the issue. We're unfortunate in that we have no politicians who are able to imagine this kind of thing. They're all stuck in a rut. They're all captured by the British political system. And Richard Murphy actually said it quite well. He also had in the National on the 21st, which was Monday, and the whole gist of his article. You cannot be in favour of Scottish independence without upsetting unionists. My message is simple. Don't worry about it. Well said, Richard. Well said indeed. Because all the parties that we have at the moment are busily trying to promise that they'll restore independence, but not saying anything about what will be broken. Something will have to be broken in order to that, because you cannot effect this is the message of Richard's column. You cannot effect big social change, a big political change, without somebody being upset, without breaking something. And my argument is obviously unionists will be upset, but my argument is that we be clever about breaking a British rule. Break one of their rules, but be clever about which one we break. Make sure we break one that we can break and get away with it. That is basically my point. Getting back to Jonathan Shafi, however, Jonathan is of the intellectual political left, as I said, and there's two problems with the left. I mean, I don't have a problem with Jonathan's agenda. He has a radical socialist agenda. I don't have a problem with that. I might have different answers to various things, but they would be just as radical, if not more. And I dare say we could reach agreement or some kind of compromise on that, because they would be radical, well thought solutions, and they would put people at the front of the thinking. So the problems that the left has, and the reason that the real left, the radical left, the people who actually might effect change, the reason they never seem to succeed is because they have this aversion to power. They don't trust power. They don't trust the people who hold power. And that holds just as true of themselves. If they got into power, they wouldn't be trusted by the intellectual left. That may be a good thing, but it creates this aversion to power. And that's a drawback for the left. It's something that prevents them actually getting in a position to effect change. And the second problem that the intellectual left have with the constitutional issue, with the constitutional issue specifically, is that they have the wrong conception of the independence issue, the constitutional issue. They do not see it as an end in itself. They see independence as a means to an end. We're back to the vision thing. Independence is for doing this and this and this. It's for creating this and this and this. And if it's not for that, we're not interested. It's making independence conditional on a whole range of things. And those ranges differ among different people. So if independence is made conditional on all of these things, then it becomes impossible to agree on it. It was like people used to say that they couldn't possibly vote for the SNP. They still say they couldn't possibly vote for the SNP if it was still in favour of the ID, self-ID on the gender issue. If they were still pushing this self-ID nonsense, then people wouldn't vote for them on those grounds. Now, how can you have a party of independence that is latched onto a policy as unpopular as that? And all policies are unpopular with somebody, like Richard Murphy says. You're always going to be unpopular. You're always going to upset somebody if you're pushing an idea, if you're out to do something. If you're out to do a whole load of things, you're going to upset a whole load of people. So don't be out to do those things. Be out to restore independence. Be out to rectify an injustice, because there is no doubt that that's what independence is. It's an injustice, an ancient injustice visited on Scotland by England, now England as Britain. It can't seriously be argued that it is a voluntary union. There's too much evidence against that now. But what we have to realise is, even if somebody can argue that it's a voluntary union, then what they can't possibly argue against is the fact that England's military and economic power at the time, relative to Scotland, was so overwhelming that even if it was a voluntary union, the terms were going to be dictated by England. So voluntary union or not, it was still a union under England's terms. And if it had been as voluntary as some people make out, then there wouldn't have been the military occupation required that we see these are British Army cantonments in Scotland in 1745. Well, none of that would be necessary if the Union was voluntary and people were in favour of it. Because there was the military was there because there was so much opposition to the Union. There were people fighting against it, people prepared to fight and die against it. So the Union is an injustice, an ancient injustice visited on Scotland, and it has to be perceived as that. If ending an injustice isn't an end in itself, if rectifying that injustice isn't an end in itself, then what is? It must be an end in itself. It must be a worthy end in itself. Restoring justice, restoring our rights, our civil rights, our political rights, our human rights. That must be an end in itself and not conditional on this or that policy being followed. Right, dealt with that. I now have a comment here from somebody. Fraser Darling is saying about Alapa for independence. This is a continuation of. This is a continuation of a discussion, a long, ongoing discussion on social media. And my apologies to Fraser Darling. I'm not going to. I can't post messages while I'm speaking anyway, and the messages from me don't get posted on every platform anyway, so it's not a good idea. I'm very happy to engage with Fraser or anybody else who wants to argue Alapa's case, because I have looked at what Alapa said on the constitutional issue, and there is no meaningful difference between them and the SNP. They're trying to make out that they're the alternative to the SNP, and they're barely even different. So what I've done is I've invited Fraser or Steve Arnott or anybody who wants to debate Alapa's policy on restoring independence. Then I'm happy to invite them on here, and we will debate this matter live. I'm not going to get into it today, obviously, because we spent so much time on Jonathan Shafi's column. But I make no apologies for that, because I didn't have any comments come in or questions come in before the show. So I have to set up something that I can talk about absent these comments. It would be good if we could set up a show where I talk to some of the people who are pushing Alapa's solution or any other. I'm quite happy to have anybody come on here and argue a point. And if I disagree with it, well, fine. I will interrogate it. I will critique it. But I'm quite happy to have anybody come on, because people don't have enough opportunities to speak. And this may be just a wee live stream and podcast with, I think, about 80 people tuned in previously. But at least it's a voice, and the recording stays there. It's on YouTube. It can be watched anytime. It can be referenced at any time. So that's a general invitation to anybody who represents a political party or an organization. If they want to come on and discuss their ideas, then I'm quite happy to have them, more than happy to have them. I love these kind of discussions. I'm not that keen on just me talking for an hour. Trust me, you're not the only ones that don't like it. My voice doesn't stand up very well to this kind of thing these days. So I would be quite happy, perfectly happy, for there to be somebody else on who could speak for wee bits while I go on about something else, taking a wee sip of water or whatever, a bit of balm for the thrapple. A proud malcontent. Well, just about at the end of our time for today, and just about at the end of my voice for today. I just like to say one thing. I'd like to end with this. I'm not always this carnassious old bastard that you see before you now. I know I come across that way. I come across as constantly angry. Well, I am angry a lot of the time, but it's cold anger. It's all under control. It's never rage, or very seldom. There are certain people who can just about spark rage in me. I won't mention any names. But yeah, I like to laugh about things as well. One of the great things about the Yes movement and the campaign was the amount of humour that we had, and we treated. There was nothing that we couldn't make a joke about. There was humour. It was a joyous campaign. It needed to be something else besides, but there's no getting away from it. It was a joyful movement, and it was great to be part of it. But we need something different now. We've done that. It's done the work, and we have. It's time to move on. Time has moved on. We're 14 years down the line. It's a very different world. A world few of us, if a world I doubt anybody envisaged in that we would have 14 years down the line. And when I say that, obviously, I have in mind the prescription of Palestine action, which is a very, very ominous occurrence. It's a very ominous development. It is the thin end of a very shitty wedge, because the definition is bad law, because it is difficult to enforce. It's difficult for the police to enforce because they don't know where the line is. The line isn't drawn clearly. They don't know what is not an offence. And for the police, the priority is to be seen to be preventing crime or punishing crime or apprehending criminals, to be more precise. And because there's no line drawn, they're going to always err on the safe side, so that the line gets further and further away from something that wasn't even terrorism in the first place. So we end up in the ridiculous position, as I suggested in a post on the National, where I suggested that. I asked Laura Webster, the editor, to run something by her lawyers, because she was talking about the need to run things by the lawyers on this. So I asked her if she would run these things by, and I gave her a list of anagrams of Palestine action. And I wanted it, I was joking, of course. This was satire, you know. I was implying that even anagrams of Palestine action could be deemed illegal. You could be arrested. I could be arrested for putting them on the National's comments. You could be arrested for putting tensional cat pie was one of them. Well, I like tensional cat pie. Put that on a T-shirt and see if you get arrested. I shouldn't mention that because that'll be Sean Clarkin's next game. He managed to get arrested. Congratulations, Sean. I knew it was what you were going for. But even in that situation, there's some cause for humour. There's a source of humour. And occasionally I put humorous things online on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. So I'm going to leave you today with a little thing that I did, poking a bit of satirical fun at the whole prescription of Palestine Action thing and the police response to it. I'll leave you with this, and I will see you on Sunday. Goodbye.